She uses Reddit. I don't, but I figured she'd listen if the advice I get is from this platform. I never imagined I'd be here sharing my family drama, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some perspective on whether I handled things right. First, let me give you some background about our family dynamics. Maeve, 31F, and I, 25F, grew up incredibly close despite our 6-year age gap. Our parents worked long hours when we were kids, so Maeve often took care of me after school. She helped me with homework, made me snacks, and scared away the monsters under my bed. She was more than just a big sister, she was my protector, my confidant, and my best friend. When I came out as bi at 19, Maeve was the first person I told. I remember being terrified, even though our family was generally progressive. She hugged me tight, told me she loved me no matter what, and promised to help me navigate telling our parents. Mom and Dad needed time to process it, but Maeve was there every step of the way, defending me and educating them. She even joined PFLAG meetings with them to help them understand better. That's the kind of sister she was. I met Colson, 24M, 2 years ago at our mutual friend Sarah's housewarming party. I wasn't looking for a relationship then, I'd just gotten out of a messy breakup and was focusing on my career. But Colson changed everything. He was different from anyone I'd ever dated. He was kind, funny, and most importantly, he understood me in a way no one else had. When I introduced him to my family 3 months into our relationship, Maeve was over the moon. She kept telling everyone how perfect we were together, how she'd never seen me so happy. Colson quickly became part of our family. He'd spend weekends helping Dad fix up his vintage car, swap recipes with Mom, and play for hours with Maeve's kids. Her husband Eric and Colson became good friends too, often going on fishing trips together. When Colson proposed 6 months ago during our vacation in Maine, Maeve was the first person I called. She cried with me over the phone and immediately started planning my bachelorette party. That's why her behavior over the past month has been so confusing and hurtful. It started with small comments at first. She'd make remarks about how Colson and I were always touching, or how we should be more mindful of our behavior around her kids. I didn't think much of it initially. Maeve has always been a bit overprotective of her children. Her oldest son is 6, then there's her 4-year-old boy and their 2-year-old daughter. I figured she was just being a concerned mom. This past Sunday, things escalated. We were having our weekly family lunch at our parents' house, a tradition we've maintained since Maeve and I moved out. These lunches are usually the highlight of my week. Everyone comes together, we eat Mom's amazing food, catch up on each other's lives, and just enjoy being a family. Eric was there with the kids, and everything seemed normal at first. I spent most of the afternoon being a human jungle gym for my nephews. They'd recently watched some superhero movie and were convinced they had special powers. I was their willing victim as they demonstrated their super strength by climbing all over me. Between their enthusiastic moves and endless giggles, I was completely distracted and didn't notice Maeve pulling Colson aside. After lunch, we all moved to the living room to relax. As usual, I reached for Colson's hand. It's just something we do, a small gesture of connection we've had since we started dating. To my surprise, he pulled away. When I looked at him questioningly, he gave me a slight head shake, our signal for we'll talk later. I was confused but didn't want to make a scene, so I let it go. For the rest of the afternoon, though, I noticed Colson acting differently. He wasn't cold exactly, but he was definitely more distant than usual. The only physical contact we had was when he had an itchy spot below his ear. He guided my hand there because he didn't want to scratch and irritate it, so I just wrapped my arm around him and gently ran my fingers over the spot. That, along with our usual hand-holding, was the extent of our physical contact that day. When we got home, I immediately asked what was wrong. That's when Colson told me about his conversation with Maeve. She had cornered him in the kitchen and told him our physical displays of affection were inappropriate in front of her children. She said she didn't want them asking questions and that we needed to tone things down. I was livid. This was rich coming from Maeve, who regularly sits in Eric's lap during family gatherings. She and Eric are constantly touching, holding hands, sharing quick kisses. Just last week, she was practically draped over him during movie night at our parents' house. Mom and Dad are affectionate too, they still hold hands on their evening walks and give each other goodbye kisses. None of us have ever had a problem with any of this because it's all innocent, normal displays of affection between couples who love each other. Colson told me he tried to defend us, pointing out that we've never been inappropriate or unaware of our surroundings. He said Maeve was insistent though, and he got the feeling she approached him instead of me because she knew I wouldn't take it well. She was right about that at least. I immediately called her. I wasn't going to let this double standard slide. I told her exactly what I thought about her hypocrisy. I pointed out how her kids couldn't care less about me holding hands with Coulson or giving him a hug. These are the same kids who pile on top of us during movie nights, who beg us to chase them around the yard, who see nothing wrong with physical affection because they're surrounded by it in their own home. I asked Maeve how our behavior was any different from her interactions with Eric or our parents' displays of affection. Her response floored me. She just said it was different. That's all she would say. It was different. The implication in her tone made my blood boil. I lost it at that point. I told her in no uncertain terms to never approach my fiancé like that again. Maybe I was too aggressive, maybe I could have handled it better, but I was hurt and angry. This wasn't just about PDA, it felt like a complete reversal of her support for my relationship. This was coming from the sister who had always been my biggest advocate, who had helped me accept and love myself, who had celebrated my relationship with Coulson from day one. I ended the call feeling frustrated and confused. This isn't the Maeve I know. Something has changed, but I can't figure out what. I tried reaching out to her again later, hoping we could have a calmer conversation about what's really bothering her, but she's not responding to my messages. For now, I'm giving her space, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something else going on here. The way she's acting, the sudden issue with my relationship, the targeting of Coulson specifically, none of it makes sense. I just wish I knew what was really behind all this. Update 1, it's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I wish I didn't have to write this update. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my relationship, and my family has completely fallen apart. I found out why Maeve was acting so strange, and honestly, I wish I had remained in the dark. Last weekend was my nephew Ryan's 6th birthday party. My parents hosted it at their house since they have a big backyard perfect for all the kids and activities. Mom went all out with the superhero theme, there were decorations everywhere, games set up in the yard, and even a small bouncy castle. Ryan was over the moon, running around in his Captain America costume. Things between Maeve and me were still tense, but we were both trying to keep it together for Ryan's sake. She wasn't making any more comments about Coulson and me, and I was doing my best to avoid any situations that might cause conflict. Coulson was being extra helpful, running errands, setting up games, and keeping the kids entertained. Looking back now, I realize he was probably trying to ease his guilty conscience. The party was actually going really well. About 30 people showed up, mostly family, some of Ryan's friends from school, and their parents. The kids were having a blast with all the games and activities, the adults were chatting and enjoying themselves, and for a while, everything felt almost normal again. Even Eric, who had noticed the tension between Maeve and me, seemed relaxed and was happily grilling burgers with Dad. As the evening wore on, people started heading home. Around 8 p.m., there were only about 10 of us left, just immediate family and a couple of close friends. We all started cleaning up, picking up wrapping paper, taking down decorations, and putting away leftover food. Mom was in the kitchen packaging up cake for people to take home, Dad and Eric were dismantling the games in the backyard, and I was helping my aunt collect all the cups and plates scattered around. I realized I hadn't seen Coulson for a while, which wasn't unusual since he always likes to help out. I figured he had gone to the basement to get more garbage bags or maybe to bring up the extra folding chairs we'd stored down there earlier. He's thoughtful like that, always thinking ahead about what needs to be done. I decided to go check if he needed help carrying anything up. The basement in my parents' house is finished but has a separate storage room where we keep holiday decorations, old furniture, and party supplies. As I walked down the stairs, I heard muffled voices coming from that room. I didn't think anything of it at first, people had been going up and down all day getting supplies. What I found when I opened that door will be forever burned into my memory. Coulson had Maeve pressed against the wall, their lips locked in what was clearly not their first kiss. His hands were on her waist, and hers were tangled in his hair. My sister and my fiancé. The two people I trusted most in the world were betraying me in the worst possible way. I stood there frozen, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It felt like I was watching a movie about someone else's life, this couldn't be happening to me. The sound of my keys hitting the floor finally made them notice my presence. Maeve jumped away from Coulson like she'd been electrocuted, her face a mixture of guilt and fear. Coulson just stood there, looking like a deer caught in headlights. I don't really remember starting to scream, but suddenly I was. All the confusion and hurt from the past month came pouring out. I demanded to know how long this had been going on, how they could do this to me, to Eric. I asked if this was why she'd been so weird about our PDA, was she feeling guilty about her own betrayal? The noise brought everyone running downstairs. I'll never forget the look on Eric's face when he took in the scene, Maeve's smeared lipstick, Coulson's guilty expression, my tears. He understood immediately what had happened. He lunged at Coulson with a roar of rage, But thankfully, my dad and uncle were right behind him and managed to hold him back. My aunt quickly ran upstairs to make sure the kids were occupied and couldn't hear the commotion. But it was my mom's reaction that broke me completely. Instead of being angry at Maeve and Coulson, instead of trying to comfort me, she started scolding me for making a scene. She said I was ruining Ryan's birthday party, that I should have handled this privately, that I was embarrassing the family. Her words felt like physical blows. My fiancé and sister had just shattered my world, and my mother was worried about keeping appearances. I couldn't stay there and watch my family try to sweep this under the rug. I ran out to my car, ignoring the calls and messages already flooding my phone. Coulson tried to follow me, spouting some nonsense about how it wasn't what it looked like. I told him if he came any closer, I'd call the police. I meant it too. The past few days have been a blur of tears, anger, and disbelief. Eric called me yesterday. He's staying at his brother's place while he figures out what to do. According to him, Maeve tried to claim it was a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. Neither of us believes that. Her behavior over the past month, her sudden issues with my relationship with Coulson, it all makes horrible sense now. She was projecting her guilt onto us, trying to make our innocent affection seem inappropriate to cover up her own betrayal. My parents keep calling and leaving messages. They're not angry at Maeve or concerned about my emotional state. No, they're worried about how this will affect the kids, about what people will say, about the family's reputation. My mom actually had the audacity to suggest that I should have pulled Coulson aside quietly and discussed it with him instead of causing a scene. As if I'm the one who did something wrong here. I'm writing this from my best friend's couch because I can't bear to be in the apartment I shared with Coulson. Everything there reminds me of him, of our plans, of the future we were supposed to have. I keep thinking about all the times they were alone together, wondering how long this has been going on, how many family gatherings they used as opportunities to sneak around behind my back. The betrayal feels endless. Every memory is now tainted with doubt and suspicion. Was she already interested in him when she was helping me plan our wedding? When she was excitedly picking out bridesmaid dresses? When she was giving speeches at our engagement party about how perfect we were together? I feel sick just thinking about it. I'm writing this update from my best friend's apartment. I couldn't stay in the place I shared with Coulson. All our wedding planning, all our dreams, everything feels tainted now. I keep thinking about all the times Maeve and Coulson were alone together, wondering if they were laughing at me behind my back. Update 2. It's been 2 months since everything fell apart, and I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. A lot has changed since my last update, and I wanted to share where things stand now. The first thing I did after that horrible night was move out of the apartment I shared with Coulson. I couldn't stand being there anymore. Everywhere I looked, there were memories of our life together. The coffee maker he bought me for my birthday, the photos on the walls, even the stupid throw pillows we spent an hour arguing about at IKEA. Everything felt tainted. My friend Ashley helped me pack up my essential stuff while Coulson was at work. I left my ring on the kitchen counter with a note telling him to leave me alone. I found a small studio apartment across town. It's nothing fancy, just one main room with a tiny kitchen and bathroom, but it's mine. No memories, no shared dreams, no betrayal lurking in the corners. I've been slowly making it feel like home, painting the walls, buying new furniture, creating a space that's completely my own. Coulson didn't get the message about leaving me alone. For weeks after I moved out, he was relentless. He left voicemails crying about how sorry he was, how it was a terrible mistake, how he'd do anything to fix things. He sent emails explaining that it only happened once, a lie, that he was drunk, another lie, that Maeve came on to him, as if that makes it better. He even tried to reach me through our mutual friends, sending messages about how much he misses me and wants to make things right. I blocked him everywhere, phone, email, social media. I told our friends I didn't want to hear anything about him or his attempts to contact me. Most of them understood and supported my decision. A few tried to play devil's advocate, suggesting that maybe I should hear him out, that people make mistakes. Those friends quickly found themselves blocked too. I don't need people in my life who think betrayal like this is just a mistake that can be forgiven. The situation with my family is even more complicated. Eric filed for divorce after finding out Maeve had been lying about more than just that one incident. Those extra yoga classes she started taking a few months ago? Turns out she was meeting Coulson. The time she said she was working late? More lies. Eric found credit card charges from restaurants and hotels on days she was supposedly at work or yoga. The betrayal went deeper than any of us initially thought. My parents' reaction to all of this continues to baffle and hurt me. They're still somehow blaming me for how things turned out. According to them, if I had handled things more discreetly at the birthday party, Eric might have been willing to work things out with Maeve. They seem to think that my reaction to finding my sister and fiancé making out is what ruined my sister's marriage, not the actual cheating itself. The mental gymnastics they're doing to make Maeve the victim in all this is astounding. I've thrown myself into work and new hobbies to keep my mind occupied. I started taking evening photography classes at the local community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was with Coulson. He always had some reason why I shouldn't. It was too expensive, it would take up too much of my time, we should save money for the wedding instead. Now I realize he probably wanted those evenings free to spend with my sister. My co-workers have been amazing through all of this. My boss gave me some extra projects to focus on, and my team has been covering for me on days when everything feels too overwhelming. I've made new friends in my photography class, people who don't know my history or my family drama. It's refreshing to spend time with people who just know me, not as the woman whose sister and fiancé betrayed her. The hardest part in all of this is missing my nephews and niece. My parents make sure to remind me of this every time they call, telling me how the kids ask about their aunt, how they miss our movie nights and games. They use this to try to guilt me into coming around, into forgiving Maeve, into being the bigger person. But I can't do it. I miss those kids terribly, they're innocent in all of this, but seeing them means seeing Maeve, and I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes I wake up and for a split second, I forget everything that's happened. Then reality comes crashing back, and I have to remind myself to breathe. But I'm getting stronger. Each day that passes without Coulson in my life is a day I learn to trust myself again. Each time I ignore one of my parents' guilt-tripping calls is a reminder that I don't have to accept toxic behavior just because it comes from family. Update 3. It's been 6 months now, and last week, Maeve tried to reach out. She sent me a long email that I must have read 100 times, not because I was considering forgiveness, but because I couldn't believe her audacity. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she'd been going through a rough patch in her marriage, how she never meant to hurt me. She said she ended things with Coulson months ago and realized what a huge mistake she made. She wrote about missing her sister and wanting to repair our relationship. I haven't responded. I don't think I ever will. The thing is, I do miss having a sister, but I miss the sister I thought I had. I miss the person who stood by me when I came out, who helped me deal with bullies in high school, who celebrated my successes and comforted me through breakups. That person is gone now, replaced by someone I don't recognize and don't want to know. Eric and Maeve's divorce was finalized last month. He got joint custody of the kids, which I'm glad about. He's a great father, and those children need at least one stable parent in their lives. He stops by sometimes to let me spend time with the kids. We meet at a park or get ice cream, somewhere neutral where there's no chance of running into Maeve. The kids don't fully understand what happened, but they know something's wrong. My oldest nephew asked me last week why I don't come to their house anymore. I just hugged him and told him sometimes grown-ups need space from each other. My parents still think I should forgive Maeve. They keep pushing this narrative that family is more important than anything else, that sisters should stick together no matter what. Mom called me yesterday to tell me that Maeve is struggling, that she's lost weight and seems depressed. I think she expected me to feel guilty or concerned, but all I felt was anger. Where was this concern when I was the one hurting? Where was this family-first mentality when I needed their support? I actually ran into Coulson at the grocery store last week. It was the first time I'd seen him since that night at my parents' house. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same ratty hoodie he used to wear when he was stressed about work. He tried to talk to me, started with the usual "I miss you, I'm so sorry" routine. I just walked away. It felt good, realizing that seeing him didn't destroy me anymore. The pain is still there, but it's duller now, more like an old scar than an open wound. The photography classes I started taking have turned into something more serious. I've started getting paid gigs, mostly small stuff like family portraits and pet photos, but it's a start. My instructor says I have a good eye for capturing raw emotions in people. Maybe that's because I've felt so many intense emotions myself lately. I've also started teaching a beginner's photography class at the community center. It feels good to share something I'm passionate about with others. I'm doing better now. I still have bad days where I miss my old life, where I wonder how different things would be if I hadn't gone down to that basement that night. But those days are getting fewer and farther between. I've learned that some relationships can't be fixed, and some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. More importantly, I've learned that that's okay. I don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they're family or because they say they're sorry. My friend Ashley asked me recently if I regret how I handled things, if I wish I'd kept quiet that night at the party like my parents wanted. I told her no. The truth would have come out eventually, and at least this way, I know exactly who people are and where their loyalties lie. It's not the life I planned, but maybe it's the life I needed. One where I'm stronger, more independent, and surrounded only by people who truly have my back.